everyone, and welcome. I'm Sylvie Stewart. I'm with Taproot EFT, and I'm so honored that you're here for day one of the Together We Rise virtual summit. Today marks the beginning of something truly special, not just the release of a book, but the amplification of stories that were once whispered, buried, or silenced, and are now being spoken out loud in full power and full presence. The theme for today is From Wound to Wisdom, owning the power of your healing journey. Every co-author you'll meet today has walked through fire in their own way. And instead of letting it consume them, they chose to become light bearers for themselves and for others. These stories aren't just personal, they're collective. They carry the kind of truth that pierces illusion and the kind of heart that disrupts old patterns. They serve as lanterns, lighting the path for someone who may still be walking in the dark. You'll hear from women who turned pain into purpose, who faced denial, avoidance, and the ache of not knowing who they were and still said yes to healing, who now lead with vision, with courage, and with deep love for their communities and for their clients. This is more than a summit. It's a collective calling. So thank you for being here. And thank you for rising with us. And so with that, I'm going to have each co-author introduce themselves today. And we're going to start with Dr. Michelle. And the first question is, what wound called you into your healing journey?
Gosh, it is so exciting to be here and so happy to be with these amazing people in this book. And so it's wonderful that it's here. So I am Dr. Michelle LaMasa-Dawson. I'm the director of Recall Healing USA and co-director Recall Healing International, sorry. And my soul tree transformation is my business. And so what I do is Recall Healing. And really, once, in my 20s, it really became super apparent that I was very wounded and that I was making choices and had been making choices throughout my life, that once I learned about Recall Healing, that I began to understand were a part of a much larger puzzle. And so those choices, being in a really hard, terrible marriage, and and having babies, and really wanting to have healthier ways to be a good parent, to want more for my kids than I was feeling, and just feeling so just no self-esteem, just very, very devalued and just worthless, really. I really thought of myself that way. And so that really kind of began the journey. And then, having a mom that was really, given up for adoption and very wounded herself and feeling very much the same way that I did, it really was wanting to break that pattern, even if I didn't really understand that in my 20s.
I love the way you said that, Michelle. I identify so much with that story. I think it's very interesting that, I have a mother that really did her best to do everything, quote, right. And she lost her mother when she was 8 years old. So she was very wounded in that loss and sort of had to grow up at the age of 8 and help run a home. And so I think became very focused on her survival and brought that into her mothering later in life. And I see that now. I didn't see it at the time. And of course, I love my mother dearly, but it's interesting how these feminine wounds kind of continue on in the daughters sometimes. And I totally identify with that.
Yeah, and similarly, my parents were divorced when I was 7, and I learned later that my mother was severely depressed, but I felt just really alone all the time. So I realized that I was the one that was responsible for me and probably a lot of other people. It's how I made it out in my small brain, but really just pushing and getting through everything until the point where my chapter starts off. I was crumbling. I had to find another way because everything was falling apart.
That's kind of what ends up happening, right? That we get to this point of something has to change.
Right.
I have to kind of redo these patterns and kind of tear them apart and break everything down and rebuild. So what that kind of leads me now is what I would love to ask all of you is how did denial or avoidance or maybe some other forms of self-sabotage show up before you moved into that process of healing? Beth, we'll start with you.
Thanks. I'm Beth Claxton. I'm a medical doctor. I'm an obstetrician gynecologist. And about 7 years ago, I left my clinical practice at a really busy community health center and hospital and started a functional medicine clinic to really help with deep healing. And I'm trying to remember the question again, Kristen. It was like the denial.
Yes.
Yeah.
Denial.
I remember not listening to anyone. Like I had to get through this. I just remember pushing. And there were like some nigglings along the way, like, is this really how it's supposed to be? But I kept pushing. I pushed through getting married, even though I knew that that probably wasn't the best choice for me. I pushed through medical school, that was like, that's the ultimate push. And, if I can do that, I can do anything, and I'm invincible and I can do it. And then when your body starts breaking down, that starts to be the sign. And thank goodness it wasn't cancer, but I had a couple physical incidents that made me stop. And the second one, which isn't in my chapter, I remember it was like an evaluation for cancer. And I thought, if this is not cancer, then I'm going to listen and I'm going to follow. And that's what happened. So now my life is like, I just listen. I look for the signs and I follow. And it's like this beautiful vein of, I don't know where it's going to go. It's like when you're going over the top of that roller coaster and you can't see, but you know that there are rails there. That's kind of what it's like. And it's always exciting.
Ooh. Jane.
I love that image. I think a lot of us are kind of conditioned to push through. And I know that for me, denial came from thinking I was doing everything right. So there couldn't possibly be anything wrong, right? I was raised in a home where you do XYZ and you'll be fine if you in a religious community that's pretty conservative and is very confident in the direction that it shows people to walk. And so I was walking that path diligently every single day and thinking that there couldn't be anything wrong because I was doing everything right. And of course, I did get to that point that was mentioned earlier where you just can't anymore. The foundation isn't there. It's not there. And you have to deconstruct in order to reconstruct. And it can be a really painful process, but yet it allows in so much light when you finally start taking the blinds off, and let that light come in to show you the next steps and to show you where your path might deviate from what you thought you needed to do.
Wow, it is so true. And for me, I think that, going through a divorce, having two young boys, and having an eating disorder, knowing that I had an eating disorder or not really having very much control over eating, never not being hungry, like my whole entire life, until I was in my 30s that I was always hungry. So it was everything with surrounding food. And there was a moment where I ate almost an entire package of cookies and I was feeling so terrible about myself. And that was the moment that I said, I have to do something differently. And I didn't know anything that was going to unfold, but I knew that I had a desire to help other people. So really that means I need to help myself, right? And that roller coaster of being up and down and in these really deep, dark valleys and really just feeling just so sad and lonely and so that really I don't look at it as denial. Then I didn't, obviously, right? But everybody told me, why are you marrying him? Like, what? And so realizing that we all have these programs that are turned on because of our ancestry, because of the pain of our parents, and then we live them out. Our parents oftentimes feel the same exact way that we do, but they don't share it with us because they want to get through it too. They don't want us to experience that. And so that really started a whole process, and it's pretty amazing to be here today and knowing that many of those things are not really programming me anymore.
I love these stories because there's all these different versions of the whispering of the awakening, right? Like, and how it shows up in our lives. And I think I know these stories are going to really touch the readers and really noticing, man, how am I numbing out? How am I distracting myself? How am I pushing through? Just keep doing so that I don't have to just sit with what's coming up for me and where I'm at and what's no longer serving me. And it's just amazing how these stories have come together.
Mm. In a previous conversation, Michelle and I, we were talking about living in this state of, denial, that it's kind of like living in fog, right? Because you can only see so much in front of you. And maybe you can only see past your foot, a couple steps past your foot, and you keep going because you don't really know what else to do. You're just trying to survive the experience at the moment until you basically hit a wall. And it's when we run smack into that wall that we realize that something has got to change. So when was that moment that you realized that your pain also carried wisdom? So there was the transformation in this story. Kari, we're gonna start with you this time.
Thank you. I'm Kari England. I'm a master intuitive and Akashic record keeper. Also a certified astrologer. I have a PhD in life. That's my that's my certificate on the wall. But I think for me, I had two sort of major awarenesses and awakenings in this process. And the first was when the foundation was crumbling and something had to be done. And I noticed it within my marriage relationship. And I had spent my life in a codependent state and pointing the finger at everybody around me, as it must be something with them. And so that awareness that, oh, it was something I actually could look at in myself and something that I could have free will to pull out of the darkness and look at all the hidden things about myself I didn't really want to see. That was the first piece of wisdom I finally tapped into. And then the second for me, as I went through this process of healing these codependent tendencies, I was led down this path to become like literally this phoenix rising, and come into this space of being this highly intuitive woman who can help shift energy and assist other women in stepping into their own empowerment. But during the process, I had to learn not to be afraid. I had to step into a place of courage and confidence and faith in myself, trust in my own intuition and in the power that I actually did carry. And that was really huge, coming from a place of like no sense of who I was and into another place of like trusting fully who I am.
That is just so beautiful. It's like, oh, my heart is just full because it really does kind of open up like that. I can't really remember the exact moment, but there was kind of these series of events and then, synchronicity we were talking about and it's so beautiful that I end up through breast cancer that my aunt was diagnosed with, getting introduced with recall healing and realizing that it was all a part of a whole and that we weren't islands unto ourselves and that we weren't blank slates coming into this world and that everything that our ancestors have experienced, these patterns show up that are not in our awareness. And so all of that started to transform and really became the seed that started to get watered in a bigger way, to want to help other people, to help myself, to transform my kids so that they could have, happiness and marriage. And so it really was like that.
Yeah, I'm just nodding because both of you, it feels like the same story. I remember though, knowing that connection to other people was the key, and I didn't know how. So that was like, what are girlfriends? Like, what is fun? What is all of that? And realizing that was my work, and it didn't really feel like work, so I didn't really want to do it.
What was it that enabled you to be able to move forward?
Well, the title of my chapter is Undoing.
Mm.
And so it was undoing all of the verbal like manuscript that I had created for myself and telling myself that was outdated. Maybe that got me through medical school. Maybe it got me where I was, and it wasn't going to take me into the future, and something needed to be different. And maybe because fun was so hard to find, that was a really good project.
Yeah. So Carrie had said something earlier about the deconstructing,
Mhm.
because it's interesting how when we're getting through those challenges of life, there's these skills, there's these abilities that we're able to lean into to get us through those experiences. But they later do become the very thing that we have to deconstruct in order to undo, in order to surrender, as some of you had said, and put the pieces all back together. So let's talk about that just a little bit, that deconstructing and rebuilding, owning the healing kind of pieces and aspects. What did that look like for each of you? Michelle, we're gonna start back with you.
Okay. Well, you spoke about just about being in a fog, and I remember just so much of the things that I did and what throughout my life, I didn't really know. I remember my parents always asking me, "Why'd you do that?" or "What are you thinking?" I don't know, like really, like just on this automatic, because whatever we live is our normal. And so it takes a long time to actually begin to understand. And one of the taglines that I have is honor the past. And so all of that, and many of us don't remember a lot of our past. And so in working, and the title of my chapter is about my 5 last names. And so it really is in the working and kind of understanding, oh, my father didn't want me, but I had a dad who adopted me and who really loved me, and my mom and dad like supported and wanted the best for us. And so, but the things that we experienced, that was our normal. And so there were challenges, there were hard things. And so that kind of led. And so that I really, really like that, honoring the past, because it's almost like I'm not, many times people are like, well, that's in the past. I don't even want to look at that anymore. But we have to honor the past, because otherwise the past ends up showing up in our every single day. And I once read that if you don't heal the wound, you bleed on everyone that you meet. And it was so powerful, because really that's it. So honoring the past, naming it, claiming the pain a little bit at a time as you go through different time space intersections, that really is able to bring to light, oh, this reminds me of this. And so it's an ongoing journey. I don't think that any of that deconstruction is done. It's a constant honor the past, live in the present, and that way we create the future.
So good.
Absolutely. I love that. Of course, I'm in the Akashic Records, so we go deep, deep past, the work that we do, but to keep it here in the now, it's for me, it's about what beliefs did I adopt or create? What stories did I tell myself as I was growing up or in relationship about the other person in the relationship, or things about, like, for instance, I like to work with relationship, especially like deeply committed relationships, because contracts are part of that. And there can be deep past contracts, but you're bringing them into the present and expecting something of this spouse or this committed partner that maybe isn't for the relationship's highest good. It doesn't work anymore. And so we have to look back, we have to find the roots of it all, and spend time understanding what's keeping that rooted. And then my dad was great at helping us in the yard. He would give us a knife and we would dig the dandelions out by the root, because he said if you didn't, they would come back. And so that's where I visualize a lot of my own healing, is like getting down to the root, and finding that and kind of digging it out, but not necessarily to throw it away, but to, like you said, Michelle, honor it, make friends with it, accept it, transmute, transform, all of those things. Yeah.
Yeah. And for me, going back to the breath, like starting baby steps, like let's just go back to the breath and anchor in that, because I know that that's real. I know that that's true in this moment, what's happening in my breath. And then as beliefs and pains and the way we operate, they start to come into the picture, you can have space to reevaluate them. If you're anchored in the breath, then there's this space and you can look at it and go, is that true for me now? Is that really something that I want to live by? And maybe you're not ready to change it, and you can see that maybe I do want to do something different, and that's on the shelf for another day, or that's my intention. So the next time it comes up, I'll respond a little bit differently. But focusing on the simplicity of the breath and really just clearing the board, clearing the landscape, so you can really study every little thing that comes back into the picture.
My gosh, so many incredible nuggets of wisdom in those words. Thank you so much for sharing them. One of the things I did want to, before, to leave everybody on here and watching, is let's kind of talk a little bit about the book that is releasing tomorrow, which we're so excited. And so I wanted to ask each of you, what did you find to be the most challenging in the process of writing your chapters and bringing your incredible stories to life? Beth, I know you just finished talking, but we're going to start with you.
Okay. I think for me, I felt like I had been telling the story over and over and over and going over and over it in my head, that writing it down, I was missing a lot of details. I'd been through it. So really getting it down and then going back over it and expanding certain parts, like what did I mean there? What was that really like? What did it feel like? So really fluffing it out was, I think that was the hardest part for me.
Yeah.
s-
Were
To,
there, sorry,
yeah,
go.
no, go ahead.
Were there aspects of it that almost felt as though you were reliving some pieces of the story,
Oh, definitely,
reprocessing them?
definitely. And learning again.
Mm,
And probably it was difficult because I really didn't want to go there again,
mhm.
because I felt like I've moved on from this, and I knew how important it was to share. So going back again and rehashing and realizing, oh wow, that I did learn a lot from that. Or I get to dig into this again and really process maybe a little bit more.
Yeah. And what was that? What was that on the other end for you once you got through it?
Hmm. I still feel like I could go in and work on it a lot more.
Sure.
It's never finished.
No.
Having it finished and in print, it's like, okay, it's out there. It's it's not perfect. I don't think it's ever perfect. And I wanted to say so much more, and that was done, but I can keep talking. I can keep telling the story, recounting the story. It helps women. It helps a lot. And I do find myself recounting over and over and over the same story,
Yeah.
and having that opportunity to really fluff it out and examine it was very helpful.
Hmm. So there's parts of the story that allow you to let go, and then other parts of the story that remind you to honor them, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. Yeah, well stated. Yep.
that's beautiful. Carrie, what about you?
I found putting my feelings on the page was really difficult. And yeah, you have to sit back in the day of it and the spirit, the emotion of it and all of that, and then put words on it. And I am a feeler by nature, so actually having to define what the feeling was and put it on the paper, it was very vulnerable for me to do that. And then knowing that people would see that innermost part of me as they read the story felt very vulnerable to me, because not very many people actually know much about what I do and what I've experienced. And so this is sort of like an unveiling for me in a lot of ways. Yeah.
Wow. And what does that feel like, that level of visibility that you're rising into?
Um, I'm excited. I'm a little trepidatious, but I'm very excited. I know that this is the next good thing for me. This is absolutely aligned with what I feel like I'm here to do and bring to the world and to help others. Yeah. So
Mhm. One of the things that we did just to share with the viewers is that after everyone wrote their chapters, they had an opportunity to read them. And that was definitely one of those, Carrie, that you were definitely being held and visible and seen. And as we were listening to that chapter, we were leaning in. And that was how it was for every single one of you in this book. Just so powerful and so beautiful. Michelle, what about you?
Well, I think the hardest thing initially was, like Beth said, to that it was all just the facts, kind of like scientific writing. And I had been used to writing thousands of papers and a dissertation and, two theses in that mode. And so to kind of come back to the actual details and the feelings and describing it, that was it was challenging, and yet it was freeing. And the other thing was that I didn't want to hurt anyone. And I'm writing about my parents and my ex-husband, my husbands, which I love the husband, because really they still continue to be a part of my life. And so it's not an ex, it's a was. And and to give gratitude for those experiences. So there was a lot of that came up. And then when I was done, I felt like almost like, oh, did I go too far? And that intimacy, that vulnerability, And I've shared these stories in workshops and out loud and, different places, but not together in one place. And so I still have that, a little bit of that feeling coming up. And so it's, but it's all part of it.
Yeah, that space of vulnerability is a really hard one for all of us, regardless of what our comfort levels are with vulnerability. And the thing that's so beautiful about vulnerability is that when we're able to really be open with others, and what bigger way can you possibly be open with others than by writing your story on in print, right? And it's going into a book. But the beautiful thing that comes from that is that it opens others and invites them into the vulnerable pieces of their own stories. So, one of the most magical things that's going to happen for readers that get an opportunity, all of you, you're going to want to get a copy of this book. We're going to have links for you tomorrow. But as you go through these chapters and read them, they also are going to invite you into your own story and the vulnerability of it. So thank you so much for stepping forward and saying yes and being a part of this book. Sylvie and I are so excited for this book to come out.
Yeah.
Thank you for the
Thank you
opportunity.
guys
Yeah.
so much.
Thank you
Both of
so
you.
much to all of our incredible co-authors for sharing your hearts today, and for everyone who joined us for this powerful conversation. Together We Rise officially does release tomorrow, and we would love your support in helping these stories reach the people who need them the most. And the bonus is all the proceeds from our book sales go to support the Center of Mind Body Medicine.
Yay.
My vision for this book has always been more about more than just storytelling. It's about offering hope, truth, and the reminder that you're not alone. I hope every reader finds a piece of themselves in these pages and walks away feeling seen, empowered, and a little less afraid to rise. So thank you all for joining us. We appreciate you.